We showed them mercy and offered them a home amongst the awoken. They met that mercy with betrayal. Now, they will feel my wrath.
Sister! He wants you. I missed your sister.
It can't be him. It's a trick.
It is me, child.
For centuries, the Empire has held firm against its enemies. Mankind has encountered no foe that steel could not tame, or whom walls could not hold. At least, that is what they taught. No one spoke of the ancient enemy now rising from beneath, and no one will be left to tell the tale.
Hello and welcome to the D6 Damage Top 7 Sinister Races. Maybe you're tired of playing a heroic human, stalwart dwarf, wise elf, or lovable halfling. Maybe you're looking to try out something a bit more edgy, grimdark, or just plain scary cool. Well, I have exactly what you're after. Let's kick off this list with number 7, the Drow. That's right, one of D&D's most iconic bad guy races, and they're right at the bottom of the list. Lolth can bite me because honestly I don't really like the Drow very much. But that being said, there are plenty of things about them that make them really great for players who are interested in stretching that more sinister aspect of elven kind. For mechanical purposes, Drow get a +2 to Dex, +2 to Charisma, and a -2 to Con. Also, they get spell resistance, which is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the reasons to play a Drow if you can get away with it. Some of the classes that I would recommend for Drow characters are Rogue, which will let you make good use of that Dexterity bonus and that Charisma bonus. Drow also make excellent sorcerers. The Dex bonus will give you the edge on ranged touch attacks, and the Charisma bonus will mean higher spell save DCs and more spells per day. I also think you can get away with an Oracle, and Drow will make fantastic swashbucklers. Now, when it comes to RP, I really like the dark and mysterious aspect of the Drow. They're notorious for having things like hidden agendas, secret plans, and they're always ready to stab their friends in the back. So having a Drow in the party is inherently going to give a level of tension to the dynamic. Also, I like the ingenuity of the Drow kind of as a group. They were able to survive and even thrive in the Underdark because they're very clever and they're very able to make use of the resources that they have there. Finally, the Drow have a ruthless streak. They're willing to get things done, no matter what the cost. Now on to inspiration for Drow characters. Obviously, there is a huge amount of canonical material in both Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons. Golarion and Faerun are full of tales of excitement and adventure and betrayal and danger that involve the Drow. I'm also quite fond of the Dark Elves from Thor 2, The Dark World. I know it's not one of the better Marvel movies, but honestly, I think the fact that they're cool and mysterious and have this really neat look, that all makes them feel very Drow and pretty awesome. The Dark Elves from the Elder Scrolls series have a very long history and a very interesting history. I really like the Dark Elf houses of Morrowind, and I think Azura is a very interesting deity for the Dark Elves. I like her a lot better than Lolth. Finally, the Dark Eldar from Warhammer 40k. Kamarog, which is the Dark Elf main city capital, is a really cool, really interesting place. It's filled with factions and betrayals, twisted Dark Eldar technology, which is just absolutely really cool stuff. If you want to read like the lore and the flavor text of Dark Eldar weapons and some of the things that they create, their vehicles, it's all really cool stuff. Dark Eldar have essentially a form of psychic vampirism, which gives a really compelling reason for why they attack worlds and take slaves and do a lot of the horrible things they do. They actually feed on suffering and misery. Sinister race number 6, Goblins. Goblins can make for great PCs if you can get your DM to let you do it. They get a +4 to Dex, which is a huge bonus. But they're saddled with a -2 to Strength and a -2 Charisma, because Goblin. Classes I like for Goblins are, first off, Alchemist. Goblins make fantastic alchemists. Their small size and their bonus to dexterity means they're gonna have a pretty easy time hitting with the bombs, with no penalty to the weapon damage. Also, Goblin throwing around fiery Molotov cocktails, how is that not awesome? Goblins will also make fine rogues, and I think it's interesting to see what you can do with a goblin who has the either shaman or the witch class, just because I think that's really on brand for the kind of tribalistic culture that goblins can have. Finally, goblin barbarians are just plain hilarious. A vicious little ball of anger. As a group, goblins can be really great because they serve as a dark counterpart to things like gnomes and halflings. They also kind of dance along the border of scary and funny, where their antics can be really amusing until they violently attack, and then it becomes terrifying. I also like the fact that they are tricky and they're very capable and ingenuitive, with things like traps and bombs and all this nasty goblin fun toys, you know? Obviously, you're probably going to want to start with the most iconic fantasy, Lord of the Rings. The goblins of Middle-earth have a lot of traits that really make them stand out and make them very sinister and great bad guys. Although these traits are shared by orcs, and there's not really a difference in Middle-earth between goblins and orcs. Now, the movie Gremlins has some of the best goblin antics not to feature goblins ever. The Gremlins really embody the fun, violent, destructive side of goblins. The way they just get into mischief, break things, and wreak havoc because it's fun. Next, Magic the Gathering has a lot of fantastic goblin cards. It's worth looking at them just to read the flavor text, because it gives you so many great ideas for things that your goblin can do or say. Finally, the goblins of Spider-Man. Now, I know they're really just dudes in goofy Halloween costumes, but kind of go with the idea of it. They fly around a major city, wreaking havoc with all kinds of nifty weapons and gadgets. That's a very kind of goblin idea that I think would work great on the table. Race number 5, Changelings. Changelings are the offspring of hags. They look human, and at some point in their life, they can either choose to become a hag, or they can choose to stay as a human-ish thing. Anyway, Changelings get a +2 to Wisdom, and a +2 to Charisma, and a -2 to Con. I think the ideal class for a Changeling is Witch. It's kind of implied with the whole thing that they do. But if you want a slightly mechanically more sound version of the Witch, I would go with the Shaman. It performs a little bit better, and the Changelings are well statted for it. Changelings also make very good clerics, and you could definitely do a lot of exciting things with a Changeling Oracle. When you're thinking about things to do with your Changeling player character, I like the dark magic and witchcraft associations that are kind of endemic to the race. Especially if you're playing a casting class, really play up the stuff you're doing and how magical it is. You could do things like gather herbs or weird, like, animal parts for your cauldron. Get a cauldron. They're not that expensive. Stir it. Cackle. Now for inspiration for your Changeling. You definitely can't go wrong with classic fairy tales, which are full of stories of young girls wandering around big scary forests, witches, hags, and all that great stuff that Disney kind of leaves out of movies. You know? The character Morgan from Dragon Age is very Changeling-esque in so many ways. She's got the dark connection to her mother, the implied, spooky, dark magic immortality rituals. Finally, the movie The Blair Witch Project. Now, I know that's only kind of tangentially witch-related, but I think the folky, like the spooky twig men hanging from the trees, and the creepy house, all of that atmospheric stuff can really inform on a changeling character. Like, maybe she was born in this dark, spooky forest. Maybe she just has vague memories of this house with all the handprints on the walls. Maybe she makes those twig guys and hangs them around her camp at night to ward off the hag's eye or other dark magical things that she may be aware of. Sinister race number 4, Fetchlings. Fetchlings are humans who have been exposed to or live on the plane of shadow, and they've absorbed some of that dark essence. From my understanding, they're not really one of the more developed Pathfinder or D&D races, but I think there are a lot of things about them that make them really exciting and neat characters to play. So first off, Fetchlings get a +2 to Dexterity and a +2 to Charisma and a -2 to Wisdom. There are a lot of different things you can do with these stats, and you can build a Fetchling character to work in a lot of different party roles. You could build a tough frontline fighter type Fetchling, maybe focusing more on things like light and medium armor to take advantage of that dexterity bonus. A charisma-based caster like a sorcerer is really good because you have the charisma bonus to get the bonus spells and the increased DC. And obviously, rogue is a great choice for Fetchlings just all around. Some of the RP things to think about for a Fetchling PC could be the connection to the shadow plane. Like, what does that dark essence kind of mean for them or do to them? I also like this kind of otherworldly aspect that Fetchlings can have because they're so influenced by a plane of reality other than the prime material plane, which is probably where the campaign is going to take place. I would say kind of play up the otherness and the strangeness of them. Some inspiration to look at for Fetchlings. The movie Dark City, which is a very cool kind of cyberpunk noir sort of thing. There's this faction called the Strangers, and they've got this sort of pale, ghostly look, and they're just very visually striking, along with a lot of the areas that they inhabit, which I think are kind of evocative of the shadow plane in a very dark place. I think in terms of the look and the ability set and kind of the presentation, Psycho Mantis from the Metal Gear series has kind of a Fetchling quality to him. He's very dark and he's very strange. This is definitely not right on the visual side, but I think the way that the collectors from Mass Effect sort of act, they're moving on this mysterious agenda. They've got access to mysterious tools and weapons. I think that would be an interesting thing for your Fetchling to kind of do and embody. Finally, the Phyrexians from Magic the Gathering have a very dark, otherworldly, not normal quality that I think is a great inspiration for Fetchlings. The third most sinister Pathfinder race are Ratfolk. Ratfolk get a +2 to Dexterity and a +2 to Intelligence and a -2 to Strength. They are small category, just like Goblins. Some classes to think about for Ratfolk are, number 1, Alchemist. Ratfolk Alchemists are great. They even have some cool archetypes for it. Ratfolk also can make fantastic wizards because of that intelligence bonus. They would make for incredibly skilled and dangerous rogues, and I think you could also make them into decent investigators and rangers. Ratfolk, as a group, have this very great sort of scavenger vermin quality because giant rodents. I think that really makes them work in, like, dark, gothic settings, especially, like, giant cities or decaying castles or battlefields. Places where they would just be scurrying around, picking up this and that, building dangerous contraptions. They're also very tied to things like the plague and all of the death imagery that rats are associated with. Inspiration for Ratfolk player characters. Well, I think I could just say the Skaven from Warhammer Fantasy, and you could be just going off into there and you'll find more ideas than you know what to do with. There are a lot of great lore videos about that kind of thing right here on YouTube that you should definitely check out. Now, if you're interested in kind of the rat swarm aspect, see the movie Willard and Coraline. There are also a lot of great rat things in Coraline. The Secret of Nim, I think just for the visuals alone, how those rats can, even though they're not evil, they're still very ominous and very mysterious and very threatening in a lot of ways. Finally, to go back to Magic the Gathering, the Nezumi from the Kamigawa block, who are a race of anthropomorphic ratmen, are a great source of ideas and inspiration. The second Sinister race in Pathfinder is Dhampir. Dhampir are a fantastic race because they have a number of different varieties that you can use to make any kind of character that you reasonably might want to play, so long as you want to be a vampire. One of the Nosferatu Dhampir would be a fantastic cleric. The Jiaying Shi would make great fighters. And the Vitala Born, because they get an intelligence bonus, would be a great wizard. Now, obviously, vampire, undead, nobility, all of those things will work fantastic for a gothic-themed character. And you can play up things like the world weariness, the aristocraticness. And you also have a lot of interesting lifestyle things that a Dhampir player character needs to think about, like, how exactly are you gonna heal yourself? Like, maybe you've got to go to some back alley potion dealer to actually get potions of inflict wounds so you can take care of yourself. And there's blood drinking. That's always something to do. When you're looking for inspiration for your Dhampir character, you can't go wrong with Dracula. Just the original. It's one of the best works of Gothic Victorian literature. Absolutely genre-defining. I also really like the vampires in the Legacy of Kain series. They have a sense of nobility, which is really interesting, and it's a great game version of the powers and the abilities that vampires have in modern media. Now, obviously, one of the best Dhampir ever, Blade, an absolutely fantastic movie series, except for Part 3, which isn't that good. But there are still some gems in there that, if you're in the mood, makes Blade 3 not a terrible watch. And, of course, the Underworld series, which is just great for the visuals alone. The armor designs are really cool, the werewolves are really cool, the weapons, the armor, all of it is great for getting ideas for your Dhampir PC. Alright, finally, the number one Sinister Pathfinder race is Tieflings. What else was it going to be? Tieflings, much like the Dhampir, have a wide variety of variant races, so you can conceivably build pretty much whatever you want, so long as you want to be all about that demon, yo. The actual Demonborn have that bonus to strength that would make them fantastic barbarians or fighters. With their bonus to wisdom, the Devilborn would make like fantastic inquisitors or clerics. And hey, why not play a Rakshasa bard? Might be fun. Now, if you're interested in some inspiration for the actual somewhere in my family line, there's demon involved. Hellboy is an absolutely fantastic movie and comic book series. I highly recommend. Especially the underappreciated animated movies that they came out with not long after Hellboy 2: The Golden Army came out. I've also heard there is an upcoming Hellboy series that is most likely going to be worth watching. Raven from DC Comics is another good source of inspiration, especially with the dark connections to Trigon and the demon underworld of the DC universe, and kind of how that interacts with her and how she kind of works it into her life. Or doesn't work it into her life. But I think my favorite way to get inspiration for Tiefling characters is to look at their heritage. What specific demon are you descended from? Like, who exactly was it? The more information you can get about that, you can bring those traits out in your character. Say that you're the progeny of like an ice devil. That would make for a very different sort of Tiefling, especially if you played up the cold and the calculating and the detachment that ice devils have. Or maybe, if you want to be that guy, you could be the descendant of a mighty Baelor, an abyssal warlord who rages constant, never-ceasing war on the prime material plane and the other infernal realms. And think about how that lineage is going to affect your character. I hope you've enjoyed these 7 Sinister races and gotten all kinds of new ideas for characters and ideas on things that you're going to want to do in your games. Now, if you're interested in more character builds and class analysis for Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons, check out D6 Damage right here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.